Welcome to our interview today. I'm very happy to have Sabine Lichtenfels from the Tamera community here with us. And it's just such a special moment for me that I'm nearly speechless at the moment. Sabine, thank you for taking time. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for being with us. And I'm very much looking forward to hear from you how you founded the community and what amazing things you're doing there. Could you please introduce yourself and the concept of Tamera?
Okay, I will start. So my name is Sabine Lichtenfels, and I'm the co-founder of a project here in Portugal, which we call Tamera One. And this project is started in 1978. So I'm in the project since I was 23 years old. But we started in Germany. And this came out of a political movement. I studied theology, and I was very, very disappointed to see much more the history of war than a history of trust and love. And so my main question was always how we as humanity will be able to create a culture of peace. And I noticed how much all our societies are based on war, are based on a kind of domination. And since I was 16 years old, I had the idea to found a village to show that another kind of life is possible. Okay. In 1978, I did meet the co-founder, Dr. Duhm, who was very known in the students' movement in Germany, who has written the book Fear in Capitalism and different books. And he was traveling through the whole country to find cooperation partners who want to start a project with him together. And the idea was to build a free university in a way, where we bring in all the different research aspects which are necessary for a culture, for a peace culture. And so we had the first years from 1978, we were in the beginning 12 people. When we started 1981, we were enough people to start the project. And 1995, then we came to Portugal, where we live now. And we have here 140 hectares of land.
Wow.
We are living 200 people, and it came also an ecocenter. So we have all the different aspects. For example, cooperation with nature. What does this really mean? We have a new technology. We did build a water retention landscape. And a lot of us is focusing also on the social question. How can peace between human beings really arise? What is necessary to leave the culture behind us where we are guided by mistrust, competition, and all of this? So it's work. It's not done by this.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. I understand that completely. How do you work with the with possessions in Tamera? I thought always that possessions are standing between peace and people.
Yes, yes, for sure. I think if you look to indigenous cultures, they would always say you cannot own land.
Yes.
And I think this imagination that we can own something is part of our society on a very deep level. Also in our how we perceive love, we often feel that we can own our partner. And I think this is the biggest point where we are so much driven by fear, fear of separation. Also, the whole capitalistic system, my feeling is it's driven by fear because we feel there is not enough. And at the end, we will discover that we can't eat money. So, uh, yes. And in
What to
this
do then?
sense, yes, we have, I feel the work is very much to find back to the divine nature of life itself. And especially me, as I studied theology, I discovered how much the patriarchal culture brought separation also in the religion, in the issue of religion. So we as human beings created in a way the punishing God. And I always say, how lonely must this Father God be if there is not a feminine aspect, the feminine divine aspect on his side? And so I feel we have a deep challenge right now, the Corona time, to discover what is a real balanced culture. And I feel that the culture in the last time lost the connection to the feminine divine power. And so maybe we came from a matriarchal culture, we shifted to a patriarchal culture. And the question right now for me is very much about building a culture of partnership.
Yeah. There must be a third
And I
way.
think we have the earth. Yes, yes, yes. My feeling is that we have done with the earth the same what the patriarchal culture has done with the women.
Yes.
So they did not see the soul anymore. They did not see the part of cooperation. So they did not ask before they touch. So it was this picture of power, what dominated the last centuries. And now we have to find back to this divine source of life. And my feeling is the real divinity is life itself. And we can learn so much from the matrix of life, from the universe. And there it's so much about balancing the feminine and the masculine powers in a way that we see the unity in it. And this is a dance of life where we have to relearn and to reorientate us very, very deeply. And already when we started our project 1978, we knew that the system won't work. They will collapse one day. And I think now we really have the result. Everything is collapsing. And now it's very, very deep, the question, do we learn to follow the inner trust of life? Do we relearn to find the connection to the sacredness of life itself? And finding from there the answers. And Tamera, the Healing Biotope 1, is very much about those questions. What is a culture of cooperation instead of domination?
This is a very important topic because now we really see how vulnerable society is.
Yes.
And we are facing economical collapse. We obviously faced some kind of medical collapse. We are facing some kind of very curious political problems
Yes.
now. And we see that all the togetherness that are already existing, they are very stable. They are not hit like the normal people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
Whether you think of Tamera or Siebenlinden or all the others, the Anastasia land in Austria, they don't have the problems. They don't suffer from separation. They won't suffer the way from economical collapse the way the rest of the society does.
Yes.
Totally different.
Yes, exactly. And when we started the project 1978, there were very known indigenous people. They once said the sentence, only tribes will survive. And of course, I don't think it's in this extreme way, but I think we have to remember that we are, from our nature, community beings.
Mm-hmm.
So that I can speak here is because my lung and my kidneys and my heart, they all have to cooperate. So already when I say me, community, nothing is done by myself. And so much that we have to understand this secret of life again. And I think the big, big challenge will be in the future that we find back to this kind of wisdom, that we are organs in the whole organism. And to find back to this reality is for me the most challenging right now, because we are so wounded. We all know the trauma from our history. Yeah. May it be a perpetrator trauma or a victim's trauma, but in the core it's the same. And here, to really heal the traumatic point and to come to the trust of the divine matrix of life, there I think many prophecies told it long before. And now I feel that we have to build a net of intelligence to find this cooperation between the different communities, between indigenous people and science, and also the movements. For example, the movement of climate change. Mm-hmm. It reminds me very much to my own youth, where we went to the streets. We did try to fight the system, but then we noticed to fight against the system doesn't help. So there is something to discover inside of ourselves, in the inner wisdom of human beings. We have to see that there is a trauma which brought us to follow the sense of fear, and we have to shift this trauma point to a new kind of trust to life. And of course, there we are also called to face death. I think in our culture, we don't face the reality that we are born and that we will die. And normally, it would be a very natural thing. We would prepare ourselves, we would connect. And to overcoming the thinking of enemy, this is really, really deep. So it's in our garden work the same, that we kill the animals which eat our plants. But is there not another way of balancing, of cooperation? This for us is the research where we are in, between human beings as well, everywhere.
And yes, there is a way of non-violence. Do you know Eike Braunroth, the snail whisperer?
Yes, I know him well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was so fascinated by his book and by his story. And that book told me that there's a non-violent way to do the garden.
Yes, absolutely. We have in Tamera a land, what we call Terra Deva. Mm-hmm. And there we exercise to cooperate with all beings. And for example, in the beginning, there were a lot of rats in our land. And normally communities, they kill the rats, they poison them. And we knew, no, cannot be our way if we are looking for a peace culture. And it was amazing how deeply the cooperation is going on now with the rats. They have their right to be at their places, and they accept the way where we invite them not to be. It's amazing. But it's a deep inner work, because when we started, I noticed there is a hidden fear of a rat. And I thought, but I cannot have fear because of it. This is something deeper. And then I noticed, wow, a rat is a spiritual teacher to figure out where are my hidden fear points, which I have to face, and where I have to do my healing work. And in Tamera, we have now some temples for the rats where people can go, where they can visit them. And it's amazing how they showed the whole tribal life of them, how they live together. They are also communities. This is just one example, and you can learn the same to communicate with plants. You can learn to communicate with fire, with water. And we know that in all the countries, fire and water are so out of balance.
Yes.
And if we want to heal the climate, we have to know that we should know where our water is coming from. And in Tamera, it's like a desert. It's very dry here in Portugal. It's a desertification which is happening here. And we did build water retention landscapes in Tamera, where we try that the earth can receive the water. Mm-hmm. And we did build little lakes. And while we brought the water back to the landscape, the trees, the plants, everything came back. Animals came back. So it was a big shift during 10 years. And so for me, this is a very simple example where we know that you could do this in the desert everywhere. People, Nabatean people, for example, in Middle East, they knew this. They knew how to cooperate with the water. And I think this would be a big contribution for the healing of the climate. So just as simple examples where if we relearn to cooperate with the core elements like the water, like the fire, we would also stabilize ourselves. So the inner crisis and the outer crisis is very much connected.
I'm very interested in what you told about rats. That the rats represent somehow the garbage in ourselves, and that point that out. So that we, in the connection with rats, we have the possibility to look at the garbage inside.
It's so much about to look at own hidden fear points, to look at points where we are angry without knowing it. All of this, the rats are masters to show us these points where they knock at our inner door and say, are you ready to bring a shift? If you are looking for inner peace, please see me. Mm-hmm. Yes. So they are masters. If we want to do reconciliation work between human beings, we can start to learn this in nature, with the animals, with the plants. And always, I think every being has his right to be. And they would not be enemies if we bring the balance back to life.
I'm living in Greece. And here up in the mountains, we have the vipers, we have the scorpions, we have the centripedes, all quite poisonous animals. And the first time a viper passed by my feet, falling down from a tree, I was quite astonished and a bit fearful. Mm. But then I tried to connect from a bit of distance, connect to the viper, and just see what kind of being that is. Mm-hmm. And the next time when I saw Greek people trying to kill a viper, I stepped in between and said, no, leave it.
Yeah, wow.
It has a right to live. And now my car is known in the village that I am breaking for snakes.
Yes, these are so beautiful examples. We have many snakes in Tamera, and they are so trustful because they know that we don't kill them. So in the lake, they come, they touch us, and it's cooperation. But this is, if we are full of fear, we cannot discover these beautiful adventures. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is such a learning for all of us.
Yes, and that viper, that special viper, it told me later about how they view territories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that she said a territory is not a piece of land. It's something floating in time and space.
Yes.
And she has the same territory as the cats have, but she knows when to get there and when not.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, these are all teachers, all a big learning.
And tell me, you came from the idea of how to found a community that is based on peace and will evolve in peace and will, of course, spread peace into the world. How did you make it?
So I think to mention one point which was very important for us was the relation of love and sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a point where there is so much mistrust between human beings
Yes.
because of the culture where we are living in. And the first years, we had to do a lot of work to bring transparency to these issues and to develop a real trust in this issue. And I like to compare it with the water situation of the earth. So what have we done with the errors? If you look the television, there is always, you see these beautiful women and then smoke camel or drink Coca-Cola. But there is no society where you can really follow the inner law of eros with trust. And so we women, we are so hurt from the last centuries, from the Inquisition, all of this, so that there is such a deep mistrust between men and women. But if you look back to matriarchal cultures, their women were very erotic beings. And they had a very clear relationship to the masculine energy. Yeah? And they did not only have partnership, the eros were allowed at so many different areas. And so it is, I like to say, we have done with the rivers, we have done with the eros the same like with the rivers. We allowed them only to flow in this direction. And at other points, it's not allowed. And so we face so much violence in our culture because of the suppressed eros. And so people say eros is violent, but this is not true. Eros itself is like the water, a purification, a cleaning, a healthy energy if we treat it in the right way. Mm-hmm. And this was a very important work in our community to and now we developed something what we call a love school, where, for example, the young children first are in contact with the plants. They can learn to incarnate themselves in the contact with the plants. If they grow up a bit, the animals are the teachers for them. And then if they become older, the eros enters the life, and they need persons who show them this is a divine energy and you can learn with it, to deal with it in a trustful way. If I in my youth would have love teachers, so many difficulties, so much pain would not have been necessary. And so we had to face a lot of difficulties because of this, especially in the beginning. Then we also were sometimes too radical. We were not noticing that it creates fear if we speak of free love. But until today, I would say we have to free love from fear. And by this, we will be able to develop real partnerships in trust and in truth. And I would say maybe 50% of our life, of our daily life, we dedicate to the community building issue, and the rest we dedicate to our professional aspects where we are working on.
This is a great thing because we see that building a real community takes time and it takes work.
Exactly, yeah.
You were talking about eros. I think that we need to explain that most people confuse love with eros.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm coming from the Greek philosophy and I know about eros, storge, philia, and agape, but I guess most people don't. So would you like to explain that?
Yes. when you come from this philosophy, we see that Eros was the only one who was not allowed to live in the government of the Olymp.
Yeah.
And it was said because Eros is like building his concentration to one point, and if you are touched by it, you lose your consciousness and you will be only needy and going with your neediness, and you are not with your real thinking anymore. But I think this is already the result of the patriarchal culture. But if you look back to the goddesses, there was this Aphrodite, for example, and there you see the connection between agape as a loving energy, and including Eros. I think if we bring back consciousness to our erotic feelings, then it can be connected with love. If not, it's so much hidden and so much forbidden that we cannot combine it. And in the early cultures, to be a mother and to be a very erotic being was possible to bring it together. Now, if you look to women, it's very often that they feel in the moment when I'm a mother, I'm no more an erotic being.
Yeah.
So it's very it's disconnected. But I think in the origin, it would belong together. And I think if young people learn to understand their erotic beings, and then the conscious love comes to it, then it will be agape. The higher level is connecting Eros with agape. Yeah.
So maybe we need to tell the other people that agape is something that which has no condition in it. Absolutely no condition.
You think, I personally think that the universal love is conducting the whole universe, and we have to find back to this truth. And then it's also not so personal. It is also personal, but it's love is a state of being. It's a state of consciousness. And if you also cannot separate love like a cake. Love is a...
Cannot divide it.
Yeah, you can't divide it. Love is a very, very deep universal source. And for example, in the last years, when people are in partnership and suddenly one partner is very attracted to another woman, normally it's at once fear of loss. And so often people don't speak anymore. They hide, they start to lie. We know how many lies are in our societies.
How many lies.
And imagine the partners have learned to trust each other. And imagine the partner can start to tell what he feels if he sees this attraction. And then trust arises. Then the errors in the relationship doesn't go lost. But if you are educated in a way where you say Eros is only allowed in the partnership and everywhere else not, so it creates at once the thinking of fear, the thinking of there is my enemy. And I'm living now since 1978 in a partnership with the co-founder of Tamera. And he was a man, or is a man, very attractive. I know that many women fall in love to him. And I thought, yes, of course, he's such an attractive man. The other women love the same in him, like me. And because he had not to hide his attraction to other women, the trust grew in our relationship deeper and deeper and deeper. And there is no fear of loss anymore. And this is the reason that also the Eros grew deeper and deeper, because truth was possible. And I think Eros and real partnership does not exclude each other if we learn to trust and to stay in truth.
And if you know that you can't possess another human being.
Exactly, yeah.
And love has nothing to do with possession, which most people think. They say it's my husband, it's my friend, it's my wife, it's my child.
It's my car, it's my land, it's, this is like, there we have to relearn. There is our wound, and there we have to understand that it creates war. And jealousy destroys so many relationships. And it's not to hide jealousy, but we have to see it's a sickness. Like asthma doesn't belong to breathing, jealousy does not belong to love. And we have to build settings and systems where we can overcome this sickness. And this we cannot do alone. So it's so much about a system change.
How do you treat jealousy in Tamera?
If it's there, we make it visible. And we have very often what we call forum, where we sit together in the group and we bring the things which are in our hearts. And often just by performing what is going on, you suddenly play the jealous Hera. And then suddenly you see, this is not me. This is something of my past. And by performing it, often it disappears already. By accepting it, by not hiding it. And then, of course, we have something like a women's council where we deeply speak with the partners what is to do that they can stay in trust. And there is no special method. It's so much about contact. And really to spend time to deeply listen and to, for example, if there is too much fear, then we often give the advice, go slow and first build the trust between both of you. And then from there, look how the next step wants to be done. So the sentence is from Eike Braunroth, I think, where he says, only touch before you ask. And to bring this trust in all our relationships, it's a very deep part.
Yes, this is. I was trained as a veterinarian doctor, and there I learned never touch an animal before asking.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's dangerous. Don't touch a dog. Don't touch a cat before asking, making contact to the cat, and then asking. Then you can touch it.
Yes.
You won't get harmed, and we lost that with human beings.
Yes. And also we try to dominate animals and we take the wild nature away. But I think it's so much about also bringing back the wildlife with contact. This is so important, yeah.
I'm living together with 10 cats. 12 cats. 10 associated to me, they selected me as their caretaker. And they suddenly, some took longer, some took less long, decided that they want to be tamed, that they want to connect to me. But they really taught me that you can't tame an animal. The animal decides itself when it's time, and whether it wants it or not. And I have two outside cats. They just don't want to be tamed. They come here for food. They scream so that I can hear them. Then they sit before me and they then tell the story about starving and being very hungry. Then they get some food and then they go again.
Yeah. Beautiful.
But they know when they come here and they have to at least talk to me.
Yes. And
when they talk, they get what they want.
And that we can learn to understand the language of any being. This is also, for me, it's like an indigenous memory in ourselves. You can listen to the plants, you can listen to the animals, you can listen to the water, you can listen to your inner voice, and you will find guidance. So there is consciousness in everything. And this is such a shift in our worldview, because often we feel we human beings are the highest, but this is it's not true.
No.
But we can learn to interact, and we can learn from our brothers and sisters, I would say. Yes.
I was just looking whether Moses, one of the chief cats, is still here, but he has obviously has gone outside. Moses and me, we had a lot of fights. He
Okay.
tried to kill other cats of mine and other cats that are associated to me, and he tried to kill little kittens. And we had a long talk, and I always told him, it's food for peace.
And he learned.
He learned, and slowly by slowly, he creeped into my heart. And I creeped into his heart. It was a fabulous process. And now I would say, if there's something like agape with me and an animal, it's between Moses and me.
Wow, very touching. And the same story is happening between human beings. I think if a perpetrator suddenly learns to find trust again, it will change his heart. And I'm doing a lot of work also in reconciliation, for example, between Israelis and Palestinians, or in Colombia. And you will always come to this point. Worldview creates war. Different opinions without contact create war. But there is trust in the center, and love without trust won't work. And suddenly immense healing can appear.
If it's no trust there, then it's no love there. Then it's something else. It's just disguising. I remember the day Moses came into the house. He walked through the cat door, deciding he wants to live in the house now. He did sit before me, and he did some kind of singing. It took about a quarter of an hour, but I understood that he was telling me he's living in the house now. He's accepting. And that day when I went to bed, he came to my bed, and I was laying just with the hand open, and he did put his head into my hand. And he started purring. And that moment I realized that that little guy hasn't been purring probably since he left his mother.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I started crying. I was so touched by this moment. And I guess, yes, we really started from there, from this moment where he did put his head into my hand and start purring.
Very beautiful.
And I think if that can happen between a human and an animal, it can happen between humans too.
Yes, I think as humanity, we are now in a very crucial moment. And I think the story of Corona is really showing us that we are only one humanity, that we see we are one. We never had this. And I asked myself, how was it possible that in such a quick time, everybody followed the new orders, and it showed in a certain way unity. And now we have to look, do we follow the unity of fear, or do we hear the message? Because if we look to this virus as an enemy, we will create societies of dictatorship, of less and less transparency, less and less diversity. But if we see the message of the virus, then he shows us, look, you followed so long time now in your societies the hypnosis of fear. But now look what happens to the earth if suddenly everything calms down, if there is silence. And there is such a release to many beings on this globe. And now we human, are we awakening or not? This for me is the question of Corona. And are we ready to integrate the message of the virus instead of putting masks? Are we seeing that we are putting masks the whole time in our life, and that now we could really show our real face? And do we believe that we show our real face, that in the deepest there is a divine power inside of us? So there is a deep learning we are in. And
It's a deep process and it can be really awakening. I absolutely understand and I'm absolutely with you. We see that we can unite, but we could unite on another level. We could unite on at least on a level of compassion. If it's not already possible to connect on a level of love,
yeah.
still can try on compassion and understanding.
Yes. That's the message. So let's do the best what is in our power, because I think if in the beginning, if we have some acupuncture points where it's visible that it is possible to cooperate with all beings, then it will have an impact to the whole system. So if it's possible with one virus to stop everything in all over the globe, the message could also be that a healing power could come and have a download that it have an impact to all of us. And therefore, it's like a medicine. So communities who are really working on the shift system change from fear to trust, they are developing the healing medicine what we need as humanity. This I feel is nourishing the work what we have to do right now.
How many groups like yours in Tamera do you know on this planet?
Communities like Tamera. So I think the community is so deeply facing the issue of love and sexuality. I don't know many others, but I know other communities who really work on the coming together, on the compassion, on the cooperation. And maybe every community has another aspect where it has to focus on. If we learn not to live in competition, but in cooperation, it will already have a big impact. So, and I feel we are very connected also to communities who are living really in crisis areas. For example, in Colombia, to the peace community San Jose de Apartado, or in Brazil, the peace community who is living in a slum. And they all have really impact by finding inner solidarity and inner connectedness to the divine source of life. So this is my big hope.
So just like me, you say there is a divine plan, there is a divine force, a system, intelligence, whatever. And it's to find order and to find peace, we have to connect to that again.
Yeah, exactly. And we have to face the unknown. We have to be ready that there is something, and then to know that all life is always directed towards healing. If you see in the earth a big wound, there are coming plants, there are coming little animals. Everything is working that healing can appear. And from this, we can learn so much. I'm very glad that I know that there exists a matrix of peace and that we only have to reconnect. This is the main message I hear at the moment.
So your message to get this out clear is reconnect to the matrix of peace because it's there. We can do it. Nobody has to fight. Nobody has to live in fear. We can connect to this matrix of peace and trust.
Okay, I think this was a wonderful closing. Thank you that it worked at least, and I hope you can use this interview for your work, and I wish you a big success. And if you wish, you can announce our books where people want to deepen, or also that we can send you some articles.
Yes, please send in some articles for our online newspaper, and please send in all the links that we can put beneath the video so that people can connect to Tamera and the ideas of Tamera and read the books that you and your partner wrote.
Thank you. Okay.
That would be great. And it would be very great if we could invite you to one of our interdisciplinary talks on Sundays. On Sundays, we always have few people and we live stream on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope, and just try to solve a question as 4 to 5 speakers.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation. Let's look that there will be a time where it works. Yeah.
Okay, we will invite you and you can always say yes or no.
Okay. Thank you.
Sabine, thank you so much.
Same to you. Greetings to Greek. It's a bit similar like Portugal at many levels.
Yes, I'm looking outside of my window and I see a blue sky and a blue sea and all the olive trees.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay.
Okay,
Ciao.
bye
Goodbye.
Sabine, bye.
Ciao.